There are so many people that's talking about the funeral of Aretha Franklin, and they're giving their opinions and views on how they felt the funeral went. And there's people that feel that the funeral was over politicized, and there are also people that's now upset with Pastor Williams for the eulogy that he preached. He only spoke the truth, but yet he's the only one that's getting blasted from the funeral. Now, I had the opportunity to watch the entire funeral, and I listened to the entire sermon of Jasper-Williams. Now, I must say that I thought, for some reason, I was under the impression that he had already passed away. It's been quite a while since I've heard Jasper-Williams or even C.L. Franklin preach a sermon. Now, I was fully aware that C.L. Franklin had passed. And I also thought that Jasper-Williams had passed away, but it surprised me that he was the one that gave the eulogy for Aretha Franklin. Now, I have so much respect for Jasper-Williams. I also have so much respect for C.L. Franklin. And like I said, it's been years since I've heard them preach. Now, with the ceremony was good. It had its ups, it had its downs. There were times that my eyebrows sort of raised. And I completely understood that there was a mixture of spirits at that funeral. Louis Farrakhan was there. I was surprised that Louis Farrakhan did not speak, but it looked like he was enjoying the service. It also appeared that he was just sitting back observing the actions of everyone else. I understand that there were a lot of politicians there. And the service went well until they started politicizing the funeral. When Eric Dyson stood up and started talking about the orange president, my stomach just kind of crawled. Another thing that stood out to me with Eric Dyson, knowing that he is an atheist, he had no respect for Aretha Franklin's funeral, nor did he have respect for that church that he was in. He was sitting up front, and usually when you sit in the pulpit, when you sit out front where everybody can see you, it's not proper for you to sit there with your cell phone. And Farrakhan just kind of sat back and watched. But it's not proper for you to sit there with your cell phone recording videos. You know, just recording. Everywhere they moved, he was recording. He was even down in the seat recording because there were times that they were close to him. So he was like down in the seat. And there was no shame in his game in disrespect for that service. But if you look at the funeral of John McCain, they gave respect to the funeral of John McCain. There was order at John McCain's funeral. Now, I'm not going to speak on the pastor that was feeling up on the young woman. I'm not going to speak on that because I already made a video on that topic. I'm also not going to speak on the attire that she was wearing at that funeral. Now, I'm sure in her mind, I'm sure her culture is different. And she might have thought that because of all the other performers that was there, she was just going to come in an outfit that met that type of space or environment. So she probably realized that she was quite underdressed when she went there, but she did what she had to do, and I'm sure she left. Now, there were certain celebrities that were standing up speaking. They gave and there was only a few that I felt that was really, really heartfelt, like Smokey Robinson, Stevie Wonder, and also Jennifer Hudson did a good job. And like I said, Farrakhan looked like he was enjoying the service. So overall, the ceremony was well, but like I said, outside of the fact that you had that Pastor Ellis that was feeling upon the young woman, and then the young woman, the way she came and dressed, and the fact that they politicized that funeral is what made my stomach crawl. Now, on the internet, there's information out there, and I was going to make a video showing Aretha Franklin wearing a Make America Great Again hat, because she was pretty involved in making changes, and she was working from the inside out. It wasn't publicized. She did what she had to do in secret, because a lot of times when you work in the community, you don't always have to show your hand. You don't always have to be in front of the media promoting what you're doing. This is what I'm doing for the black community. Hello, it's me over here. This is what I'm doing. You don't always have to do that. Okay? Because then you have your reward. Your reward is the fact that you got all of that attention and people are telling you how well you're doing. That's your reward. But if you want the true award, then what you do in secret, the Most High will reward you openly. So, like I said, it was a good service until they politicized it. And the only person that was attacked was the preacher that did the eulogy. And I'm so glad that he stood by his word. When they interviewed him, when the media was interviewed, he humbled them by his answers. The man is full of so much wisdom. He came back sharp. And the thought came to my mind, this man should be president, because he know how to handle the media. And they was ready to tear him apart. And you had people that was commenting on, of course, social media, saying that he was misogynist and he was homophobic and all these other things that he was saying. But he said that black lives don't matter. I understood what he was saying. He said black lives don't matter unless black lives start mattering to black people. And he gave an example of how many blacks that were killed by the Klans. And then he gave the numbers of how many blacks that died at the hands of other black people. I talk about that all the time in my videos. And I get hate. So, of course, he's going to get hate. Right? That's all he was saying, that black lives don't matter to black people until it matters to you to take care of your own communities. Right? And then he says that black people have lost their souls. Now, I made a video in the past, and I'm going to try to find that video. If I find that video, I'm going to post that video on the bottom here. But I did a video in the past, and I basically said the same thing. Black people have lost their souls. They sold out. And so the media took that and ran with it. The devil took it and ran with it. They didn't talk about or criticize Eric Dyson that was down in the seat video recording. They didn't talk about that. They didn't talk about how disrespectful that was. Being the man of his stature and he was doing what he did. They didn't talk about that. They didn't talk about the fact that Eric Dyson got up there and politicized it. at a funeral, calling Trump orange. They didn't talk about that. They didn't talk about Al Sharpton's comments. They didn't talk about all of the political comments that was directed at Trump. And basically, and this is what I put on Facebook, that Aretha Franklin's funeral was no more than a Democratic rally. They were rallying. That was a Democratic rally against Donald Trump. See, Donald Trump is in a completely and totally different environment. They're at a funeral and they got their minds fixated on Donald Trump. They could not attend a funeral without mentioning Donald Trump, politicizing Aretha Franklin's funeral. So much disrespect. But at John McCain's funeral, it was in order and they were respectful. And they're still talking about it in the media. They're still talking about how great John McCain was, although if you really read up on the history, John McCain was not a hero. I remember when John McCain was allegedly freed. I remember that. I remember when he was held hostage. And he is not a hero. See, this is how history is bent and twisted. See, because we have new generations that's coming up that don't know the past. And see, you have people like myself that lived from the 60s up to this point. So I not only learned everything from the 60s up until this point, I'm still learning this generation and I'm going to learn the next generation. So sometimes it's wise to listen to older people, especially people like Jasper-Williams. Now, again, like I said, I didn't know that he was still alive. I thought he had passed on. And the next time I'm in Atlanta, which should be soon, I'm going to visit his church. I have not heard him preach in so long. This is the first time I've heard him preach in so long. Well before C.L. Franklin had passed away. See, so I have to visit his church. And he's done an outstanding job. And everything he spoke in that eulogy was right on point. See, people talk about the black church and the black preacher, how the black preacher don't speak the truth. And then when a black pastor or preacher stand up and preach, you have a problem with that because now you're put in a position where you're given the information that you need to change. And most black people refuse to change. See, so now he's become the target. He's become the enemy. Out of all the disrespects that were done in that funeral, they targeted the preacher, the one that did the eulogy. The same thing they're doing to Trump and Trump's followers. See, this is what the demon craps are doing. And black people are still on that demon crap plantation. And you need to come off. Now, earlier I thought about doing a video about how blacks need to come off the black plantation because that's holding you back. Blacks will never excel until they come off of that black plantation. Another thing that Jasmine mentioned was the fact that in time past, economically, black people were doing good because of the fact that black people had their own businesses. I remember my aunt had a laundromat. I remember seeing black grocery stores. I remember seeing those black businesses coming up, but now there's hardly any black business. And the few that there are not supported by black people. And that's sad. Black people have lost their way. Many black people have literally sold out to Satan. And they admitted openly on video that they're satanic, that they have joined Satanism. They've openly admitted. You see so many males and females that's now reading tarot cards and referring to themselves as being spiritual. They openly proclaim voodoo. So black people have lost their way. They've turned their backs on the Most High. And sitting back watching the people, if you sit back and just observe the people and the spirit of the people there, you will clearly see that black people have lost their souls. Many blacks have lost their souls. They have lost their way. Just by watching in that funeral. And when he was preaching, there was such a big disconnect in the message that he was preaching about. A huge disconnect, even among the young people sitting there. Because black people have grown or come to love and be used to death and destruction. Every moment, every second, every hour of the day. They're used to negativity, and they're not used to a man standing up giving a message. He spoke on the single parent moms and how fathers aren't in the home. And the fact that women cannot raise boys to be men. The same topics that I talk about in my video, right? So I really appreciate that brother. I'm glad to know that he is still alive and doing well. And like I said, I'm going to visit his church the next time I'm in Atlanta. I was just in Atlanta about maybe a week ago, and I will be there again. And I will make sure that I visit his church and I, contact him when I get there. So it's been years since I've heard that brother preach, and he still got it. He still got it, man. So that's my thoughts on the funeral. But I want to ask you, do you feel black people have lost their souls? Have you felt that there's a disconnect between God and black people? See, it's easy to call yourself spiritual, but unless you have the fruits of the Spirit, love, joy, patience, temperance, long-suffering, gentleness, meekness, kindness, faith, unless you have the fruit of the Spirit operating in your life, then everything you say is null and void. And because you have the fruits of the Spirit, don't mean that you can't speak the truth against someone that's doing evil. So feedback, tell me what you think, subscribe. Until next time, I'm fearless.